Alright guys, so we're now going to do the RE-related questions for me. Some of these questions weren't exactly posted on YouTube, some were personally asked, so if you do not see a little comment picture quote, it means I was personally asked. Alright, so without further ado, let's get on this. So, Wavy to Paz asks, when's the outtakes? Sometime soon, I hope, you know. I stare at my sound mixer. The next question, I think, was asked by my good old buddy Nabil. How did Sdrawkcab become the go-to for foreign languages? That idea either sprouted up from my racist thought of Russians, or I was just spoofying the Russian guy and then decided from episode 3 and onwards that Sdrawkcab was officially the language for everything, because we don't need to speak the same language as everyone else. What? Silly goose. Nabil also asked, how does Arvin do his so well in the first Jake episode? That, my friend, shall be answered in the one of these days to be released Everything Awesome About Resident Evil 6 segment. So, our good buddy Levy / Piers asks, what gave you the idea to do the whole Matrix thing with Chris Redfield's story mode? Things honestly just happen when I write. I reviewed the cutscenes first to make sure what I'm writing is able to fit in with the scene and make chronological sense, and then I ultimately think, like, you know, Chris Redfield throwing the bottle at the Russian or whatever, you know, then doing it again, just making sure it works. I would not, like, retrace to suddenly them talking on the fucking table or whatever. I did rearrange the whole order of, like, you know, when Pierce talks to Chris and then eating, you know, fucking steak. All that rearranging shit. But what I think what ultimately influenced my idea for the Matrix thing was the fact that I had a trainer for the PC version which could do all these fancy things that I would do with Chris's episodes. One of the things I insisted on making use of was Chris having Jake's CQC melee for one of his weapons. Because, you know, the guy gets a bunch of fucking muscle and steroid jokes. He clearly needs to have this ridiculous mobility of some fucking guy on red pills, you know, like Wesker. It was a golden ironic thought, to be honest. So, basically, the melee for Chris influenced the Matrix idea, but that was also a way to follow up on Chris's belief he was plugged into the Matrix at the end of episode 5. Everything else from there onwards was just basically the tree growing from the seed of that joke. Our next question is from Zach Garcia, also known as Chaos. How do ya happen? Fun fact, the part where Chris exemplifies Pierce's point of taking red pills only had "there is no spoon" written in the script. So for whatever reason, I ad-libbed that line. And I think that might have been because of the montage and some of the shit I was doing in the recording. So then I just began to fill in for the attack noises, which then reused the lines to add some life to the montage, rather than just having the music play in the background and then showing Chris beat the shit out of everything like I had originally planned. In terms of the attack noises, I think they might have been influenced by Soul Calibur 3's Nightmare, who was voiced by Patrick Ryan. I don't remember the Japanese name at the moment. I probably will throw it in the subtitles, like right there. But one of his attacks, which I will throw up the video here, was something like Urya! Nurya! Urya! Nurya! Though, because it was Chris, I went douiyah. But actually, in the Japanese version, which is ironic because, you know...
Do you know who I am? I am Chris Redfield. I punch boulders. Douiyah?
Douiyah! It's your...
Douiyah! Is
like,
that the Japanese version of what I...
And lo and behold, in the Japanese version for Soul Calibur 3's voice acting... Douiyah! Douiyah! 18 does have douiyah in place of Nurya. And to be quite honest, I did not expect douiyah to catch on. But when it did, I decided to make the gag. So there you go, that's how fucking douiyah happened. Another question from Zach. Why did Chris have Matrix syndrome? I think the concept for that idea, aside from the obvious outcome in episode 2 and onwards, was that Chris was so traumatized by the loss of his teammates that he lost his sense of reality. Like how he does in the actual game, as mentioned in the game files, Except the Dante version of that is that he begins to see everything from the perspective of a video game and / or Matrix. Kind of as his way to deny the trauma. Even though we already do a bunch of fucking fourth wall NPC shit talk even before then. By the time episode 9 happened, I decided to utilize my fourth wall breaking skills to further deepen the concept of his Matrix syndrome, some sort of drug side effect to his sanity and hearing ability. Why does Chris go son of a bitch at episode 11? That's another Zach question. Because Piers somehow snuck his goddamn emblem on his fist, and Chris was totally oblivious to that. Clearly he was going to run away from the whole, Piers dying, and then Piers was just nope, you're not gonna forget. I'm gonna leave my fucking patch on your hand, boy! This one was asked by Comic Lover Girl number 1, I think, personally. Why the curry virus? Why? Are you asking why I picked the curry virus for the name, or why did I even bother calling it curry virus in the first place and not by its actual scientific name? Well, let me explain to you about a thing I do in Spoods. I usually will change certain names and titles to something else. For example, the viruses in my Resident Evil Spoods, as revealed in the episodes, we got the T virus, which is translated to the terrible virus. The G virus is known as the Great Virus, and the C virus is the Curry Virus. And let's not forget that the progenitor virus replacement is Pudding. And then also we got RE4 with Lala Cake's virus and the pills Lewis gives to Leon, codenamed Belt. I will always do that. I like it. It's funny to me. And now as for why I chose Curry to replace the C virus, the C virus is supposed to be a combination of the T code Veronica virus and G virus, hence G's mutation and T Veronica's burning effect. And curry can get hot with some spice, so, as mentioned by the Javo I voiced in episode 2,
I pissed off the curry gods. It's spicy enough! Too spicy!
that happens. So with that, the curry virus. Delicious, no? Groudon 2006 asks, I'm curious, did you get inspiration from the Abridged series Days of Our Lives Resident Evil 4? Long time ago, from my old Resident Evil 4 spoods, maybe. And those days were my shitty old spood days on DarkAbridgerEX. Cause both House of the Dead and Resident Evil for my spoods were basically influenced by my two inspirational figures, Mr. Seacow and the Ward. And sadly, those were the days when I did a half-assed version of all their shit on mine, with only a small percentage of original content or something decently funny. Me doing both RE4 and 6 now is a completely different story. RE6 story is to be explained via next question. Rocio Flores asks, what got you interested in the Resident Evil franchise, and how did you come up with the voices you gave the characters in the Abridge? Were the voices somewhat based off the characters' original voices from the games? Okay, I think this is the last question, so this one's pretty long. Okay, so I was always intrigued by the whole zombie survival horrors since I was little. I was just staring at House of the Dead's arcade opening back in the day. It was only natural that the same thing would happen to me when I noticed Resident Evil throughout the years. It was calling to me back then. Back then, it was just me watching people play it on YouTube until I decided, I want to play this now. So by the time I bought my first Resident Evil game, which was Resident Evil 4, that I bought while I was on vacation in Puerto Rico, ironically, I was already getting comfy with House of the Dead and made a few shitty spoods back on the older channel, and my major influences to spood the game ended up being the ones I referenced a lot, like a rip-off artist in all my older spoods. Which I eventually dropped them due to certain circumstances in my first life, which shifted my gears to doing Let's Plays or Dante Plays. Though, once I started college, I had wanted to do voice acting again after getting ticked off by the fact that I couldn't help Sitsnap or have her notice me as a human being. I began wanting to start my own voice projects again, which then led me to noticing that I had recorded footage a long time ago when I had the idea of doing Resident Evil 6 for an abridged spood, but I never followed up on it. But then the next thing you know, the original version of episode 1 was released, which you won't be able to see anymore because I don't want people watching that episode and getting the wrong idea for the series. You know, because that episode was pretty crappy and everything else was way better than that. So, yeah. I actually wasn't intending to have a cast until Levy had asked me, hey, I want to play Piers. And I'm all like, okay, yeah, alright, you can do that, you know, because solo voicing things can get a little hard. But next thing you know, I want to have a girl to voice the bartender. And then next thing you know, Arvin showed me BTVA, and I got hooked up on there and started holding auditions for the characters, which then began me actually thinking about the whole direction I wanted to take the series. All the characters' quirks that I had to come up with on the spot was a bit of a trip for me. Not to mention, I had to make sure that I followed up on all their quirks in all the scripts that I wrote from there onwards. However, on the auditions, I had made no specific request to sound like the original VA. That was a choice, such as Jake's voice. I said Troy Baker range, but it just needed to fit Jake's range, if anything. Hence why Reno Rebirth sold it when he auditioned. Leon's voice, I said no one had to sound like his original VA. They could just do whatever they want, just as long as it fit his image. My voice for Chris was supposed to be an impersonation of Jack Warburton, a voice actor who's done some manly and deep roles such as Kronk in The Emperor's New Groove and Joe Swanson in Family Guy. Naturally, I don't sound like the guy.
I mean, come on, does this sound like the fucking dude to you?
But it at least managed to fit with Chris's bulk, and it got the job done. So Leon's voice was supposed to sound different from his original VAs, which is why I had casted Jason Trant for Leon. However, when the role of Leon was passed back to me, I had to come up with something different, because my Leon was a half-assed ripoff of Sean Clark's Leon in his Days of Our Lives Resident Evil 4 parody.
Why can't you just burn in hell where you belong? You'd have to be smart to understand. You fucking bitch.
So, you know, it
Used to sound something like this. 808! God damn it! Ugh, fucking merchant.
I didn't want to do that anymore. So by the time I started doing episode 7 and rebooting Resident Evil 4 Spood, I wanted to do something different. So for Resident Evil 6, I turned to Matt Mercer. Due to me liking how I sounded whenever I did an impersonation of
I'm glad you're here.
which is kind of close to my voice when I do an impersonation of Keanu Reeves' Constantine in the video game. Also classified as one of my original characters in this little story series that will one day be published. Just gruffier. And thankfully, the voice managed to work out in the comedic setting, so I went with it. All the other characters were just whatever the VAs did for them. That will be answered in the Q&A for the VAs. As for when Jake was chucked back at me, I basically followed my directions and tried to Troy Bakerize my voice, which was a bit of a challenge because I felt like my normal voice was just too high given Troy's performance and Reno's. I contemplated at one point giving Jake a gangsta voice like Steve Bonsai in Code Veronica X, due to my low confidence in fitting him. So I was just gonna do Jake something like this or something, I don't really know, but you know, Applejacks and all that stuff, yeah. Though as you can clearly see, that idea was scrapped and I just stuck with managing my inner baker for Jake. The only times I felt confident was when I was yelling, because, yelling. At the end of the series, I'm still not really completely sure if I managed to work it out with my voice from the end. So I'll just leave that for you guys to decide with your thoughts and opinions on that. So that's all the questions from me. We'll be seeing you guys again in the Q&A video for the VAs. Fabulous!